Hey YouTube, how's it going? Kevin Cleary here with a knife video, and I've got a couple of knives here that I want to compare. So this will be a comparison video between the zero tolerance 0452, and this is of course the M390 and blue sprint run from last year. The other knife I've got for you is the WE Knives 601, and this is of course in the blue with the purple hardware and a bit of black coating on the blade, but mostly satin. Both of these I would consider pretty high-end knives, and I would consider them knives that would appeal to a person who wants something a little different, a little special, and of course they do have a cost associated with that, and in fact on that they're very, very close. These originally retailed for $260. They're gone from retailers now. There were only a limited number made, and I've seen them going on the secondary market for between that $260 price point up to about $300. These of course retail for $295 brand new, and on the secondary market you can get these actually cheaper. So right now if you're buying both of these, you're only going to buy these used. There's no more at retailers, and so if you compare a used price on this, you can actually get this a little cheaper than this, even though initial retail price is a little more. So they're actually in the same ballpark for price point. So I wanted to kind of get that conversation out of the way. Now, there is a philosophical question here to kind of be discussed, and I won't belabor this too much, but I will have some discussion about the difference in what you're able to do with these two knives. So this knife, because of the fact that it's USA made and they wanted to keep the price down, and ZT has done a great job of delivering really nice blades at a very reasonable, generally around $200 price point. They have a few that go higher than that, but not too many. But because they're using American labor and they're trying to get at a particular price point, they're limited to how much they're able to do in terms of machining and milling and anodizing and all of that. Now, on the other hand, WE Knives, because of the cheaper cost of labor, they're able to do a lot with these knives. Like they're skeletonized, they're milled out, they've got holes, they've got decorative milling and accoutrements all over them, they've got anodized hardware, milled titanium clips. So there are a lot of things that WE Knives is giving you that I would say you're not going to be able to find in your average ZT. However, overall quality and performance is actually very comparable. Okay, so the philosophical question is here, do I take the overseas produced knife, which is able to offer some upgrades without going crazy on price, or do I take the USA made knife, which is going to perform really well and have still a lot of pride of ownership, and especially in this limited run, have some exclusivity to it, and in this case, if you're buying a normal 0452, you're actually paying quite a bit less than the WE, even though you're getting that American-made stuff that people really like. Now, I'm Canadian, so I don't really have a dog in this fight, but I know many of you think long and hard about all of that. So I'll try to address it a little bit beyond what I've just said, but essentially, to simplify it, yeah, you can have some upgrades in terms of the amount of work that's involved because there is a cheaper labor force available overseas. And that's not only in China. There are a number of places where labor is cheaper than the US, okay? So that's a consideration. Now, having said all of that, let's get into our actual discussion about these two different knives based on primarily their features, their specifications, and their performance. Beginning, as we always do, with size and weight. And I'm going to do the ZT first and then go back and forth between that and the WE. Okay, so let's start off with size and weight on this guy. This is definitely a big knife. The cool thing about this knife is it doesn't have the weight and it doesn't carry like a big knife. It actually is very, very comfortable in pocket because of the fact that when you close it, it's quite slim, as you can see, and the weight on this is really good at 4.2 ounces. So consider that this knife overall is 9 5/16, so it's more than 9 1/4 inches long. The blade is 4 1/8 inches, and that handle is just a little over 5 inches at 5 3/16. So you've got a really big knife here, guys, but when you fold it down and put it in your pocket, it does not carry like a big knife, which is really, really cool. If you're someone who likes big knives, but you don't want to be weighed down, or you like to carry a large knife, but you go to places maybe for work, or you wear clothes that don't allow you to carry something bigger and heavier, then this is a great option. And in terms of what you get, and what kind of performance you're going to get and what kind of utility you're going to get for the amount of weight you have to carry, this knife really, really skews what's out there. Like it really has stats that are outstanding. Now, on the other hand, the WE knife does some impressive things as well. Size and weight on this, well, it is smaller at 8 3/4 inches. In fact, it's really 8 11/16, but more people are going to kind of have a sense for what 8 3/4 is. 3 13/16 blade. So it's getting close to 4 inches, but it is quite a bit shorter. And you can see if I put those blades near each other, it is considerably shorter there. 4 7/8 inch handle. And the weight on this, despite the fact that it has a full titanium backspacer, is only 4.5 ounces. So it's still pretty light. Now, I will say this, that tells you just how impressive the weight to size ratio is on the 0452. Okay, this knife weighs 0.3 ounces less, even though it's much bigger. So you got to give ZT some credit for that. But WE knives also deserve some credit, because this knife, if it was just standard construction, would weigh quite a bit more. And if you take a look, there you go, you can see that now, and same on the other side. It is very heavily milled out to save weight, which is really, really nice. Now, let me say, I've heard some people complain about that. I have tons of knives that have this kind of construction where they're milled out on the inside to save weight, and none of them have issues collecting gunk and dirt and debris from your pocket. I just, at the very most, I might have to once every week or so, blow it out with just my breath, like just blow a little bit inside of it, and it's cleaned out. So not a big issue for me. Okay, so size and weight and how these carry, both of these are going to be very, very comfortable to carry. Both of them, are definitely doable in a lot of different roles for a lot of different people. You are certainly getting more for less when it comes to the 0452. Now, maybe you don't want quite that much blade, okay, for your EDC knife, but for a lot of people, for me, this is a great carry knife. I've carried it, used it, I've had it out in public lots of different times and not had an issue. But remember that I live in the country, I live in sort of a rural community where almost everyone hunts and fishes, and there's a real outdoors sort of culture where I'm from, so carrying a knife is not a big deal, and that may not be the case where you are. So there you go, that's the size and weight comparison, and I've got to say this one has kind of got to go to the ZT because of the fact that it is lighter, even though you're getting more blade, a larger handle, you're just getting more knife for the weight, and definitely when you put these two in pocket, you can notice that this is a slimmer, easier to carry knife, no question. What about the blade? Well, one thing I will say is on the standard 0452, which we're not using here, I specifically thought these made a good comparison because of the fact that the upgrades on this do put it into a higher price point. But on the standard 0452, you're getting S35VN. This has M390, which I'm a huge fan of. M390 is just great steel, and that blue anodization, which I do really like. So this is a knife that I already liked, but with these upgrades, it really put it into the stratosphere for me. This is just a knife that I adore. And for me, this, out of all of the different sprints that ZT did last year, this one is my very, very favorite. Okay, so blade on this, M390, you've got this very large drop point with a pretty high flat grind, nice and thin behind the edge, so it cuts really, really well. Now this is a pretty fine tip, okay, and yeah, that means if you go prying on things, or if you're using this and drop it on a concrete floor, there is a pretty good chance that you're going to break that tip off. So kind of be aware of that. That said, it's a great steel. It's a great useful blade shape, good for food prep, good for most EDC tasks. Of course, in a defensive role with all that steel, there's quite a bit of potential for damage there. So whatever you're carrying a knife for, you know, this blade is totally up for it. Compare that to the S35VN blade on the WE knife, and yeah, there are some differences. Number one, now this knife does perform well, and I've carried it and used it quite a bit, and I've not had any issues cutting things. However, let me say this. On a sort of a fine cutting task where you need to use that tip is very thick, okay? Look at the profile. If I compare these two, and this is one of the reasons we do these kind of comparisons. See how much material there is out here? Okay, it's very, very thick. And that's one of the cool things that they've achieved with this particular grind, which is really neat. However, if you're sort of cutting with this portion of the blade out here, you know, it does limit you in some cutting tasks, okay? Because you've got to move a whole lot of material through whatever it is you're cutting on, okay? It also, you know, this blade is not a difficult blade to sharpen. That is the WE knives blade. It's not difficult per se, but it's very easy to mess up how nice this knife looks when you're sharpening it. So maybe you don't care about looks at all. Although if you're buying this knife, I would suggest you probably do, because that's one of the main features is the aesthetics of it that are going to attract people. But yeah, keeping that blade looking as good as it does is going to be a little bit of a challenge when you go to sharpen this, okay? Just to kind of be aware. So from that standpoint, I guess the one other consideration here is that, yeah, when you look at these two blades, and let's see if I can bring them up here and give you a bit of a close-up. You know, you look at these two blades, and there absolutely is something special about this one, okay? It's very attractive. It's really, really well done. This is a fairly standard knife blade, okay? This one, not so much. And so there is that uniqueness that the WE is able to offer that the ZT is maybe not providing, okay? Now, you know, people are going to feel differently about that, but if one of the things that you're looking for in your next knife purchase is something different and interesting, then the WE knife may get the nod here. Now, in terms of just straight up usefulness, the 0452, the blade on it is a little more easy to deal with for your average knife user because of the fact that it's going to be a little more versatile because of the way it's ground, and it's going to be a little easier to sharpen as well. Okay, now moving on to lockup and deployment. Again, we'll start with the ZT. It is on bearings. It has a stainless steel lock bar insert. It's a it's a flipper only knife. Very, very well done. You know, nice decorative pivot here. One of the best actions on any ZT. And in fact, you know, this is a knife I keep around, one, because I like it, but two, I will often bring this in as a comparison to other knives that have really good actions because this is so well done for the price point. Are there others that are as good? Yeah, but for what ZT is usually doing, you know, this knife is pretty exceptional. Okay, what about the WE? Well, WE knives have a tendency to have weak detents. This one is not so bad. It's about the strongest of the detents that I've had on any WE knife. So it deploys quite nicely. It is actually a little smoother. Now, I don't say that to you know, speak ill of the 0452. It's still a phenomenal action, but you can feel the difference between stainless steel and ceramic bearings when you deploy these two knives. And there are a number of other factors, okay? There's a little more weight here. You know, you've got things like the way where the flipper tab ends up oriented compared to the pivot. So there are all kinds of things to consider when you think of how a knife deploys and how it feels deploying. That are, you know, there are many, many factors to consider there, but the reality is this one does feel just a little smoother, a little cleaner, a little more maybe hydraulic. And that is saying a lot, okay? If you've never felt how good a 0452 feels, you know, this is truly exceptional, and for this to be better, that says something, okay? So I've got to say, now all other things are pretty much equal. They both have lock bar inserts. They both are flippers. They're both very easy to use and actuate. And I will say maybe one other nod to the WE is that this tends to grip your thumb really, really easily. So if you're one of those guys who wants to fiddle with your knife, it is just a little easier to get your thumb onto the lock bar on the Wii knife and get it to unlock. Okay, not a huge difference, but a small thing. So I've got to say, in terms of the action, and by action we're considering sort of lockup and deployment and feel and the features that it has and all of those things considered, the Wii knife is just marginally better than the 0452, and that's pretty impressive for that knife, because the 0452 is very good. Okay. Let's move on now to the handle on these two. Now, this is where there's going to be a few more differences, and certainly this is where the buyer who wants something special and unique and interesting may have a stronger preference, because the ZT, one of the ways that they save some cost on these is by simplifying the handle construction just a little bit. So we just have, pretty much a slab of carbon fiber, a slab of titanium. They are contoured and comfortable in hand for sure, but it's a non-tuned lanyard hole. It's just a bent clip, and lots of people, by the way, have complained about the bent clip on ZTs, and in fact this year there are some upgrades that have been done to ZT's clips, but they're a little plain. Okay, there's not a whole lot of cool stuff going on. Now maybe you like that more minimalist look, and certainly I really, I have no complaints about this handle. I think it's actually really well done. The clip works just fine. Could it be a little nicer, and would I appreciate maybe a milled clip here? No question, I would, but it's not, to me, a deal breaker, and it doesn't ruin the knife or anything like that. However, when you compare this to the Wii knife, look at the amount of work that has gone into this. You've got design elements all over the place. Generally, they're pretty well done. You've got a milled titanium clip that's purple anodized. You've got a nice milled backspacer. You've got cut-in lines all the way around all these chamfers. Really nice. Okay. The reality is that one of the things you're getting with a Wii knife is a lot of milling and a lot of detail and a lot of attention to detail. And they really do a good job with that. In terms of comfort and ergonomics, these knives are actually pretty equal. And the one complaint I would have about both of them is if I put this where it's pretty natural to land, notice how far my finger is from the blade. So if I'm doing a hard or detailed cutting task, it's almost 3/4 of an inch between where I can start cutting and where my finger is. I like, if I can, to be able to get right up on that blade and be able to do fine detailed work. This knife doesn't really allow for that very well, but guess what? Neither does this one. So in this configuration, again, I've still got almost 3/4 of an inch. Now, the one thing that ZT has done better in my mind from an ergonomic standpoint is they've given me a flat portion of blade here. So I can get a little closer to my work and have some leverage for my thumb as a purchase point right there on the back of the blade. And that to me is kind of important. A lot of knives kind of forget about that. And certainly, I would have preferred if this knife had stopped this swedge maybe an inch up the blade here and given me a spot to rest my thumb right on the back. That would have been a big improvement in my mind. Okay, so there's the ergonomic discussion, and of course not only are ergonomics a consideration here, but the amount of milling and the amount of detail and the amount of interest that is developed from the design elements on the handle. Construction, of course, is fairly similar. You've got machine G10 machine titanium. The carbon fiber is a cool feature, okay, and you don't see, to my knowledge, I'm trying to think here if there's many Wii knives, they don't do a lot of carbon fiber. There are some with carbon fiber inserts, but I don't think there are any with a full carbon fiber scale. Now that may change for this year moving forward, but that could be another consideration for you. Maybe you just love the look and the feel of that carbon fiber and you really want that. So that would be a consideration for some people. Overall though, I've got to give the nod in terms of what's going on with the handle to the Wii knife, just because of the extra detail and interest they're able to build into these knives. Now, let's kind of wrap this up with an overall sort of comparison, recommendation. And I've got to say, both of these are great knives. For me, again, this is definitely the best ZT Sprint run that they did last year, and really it's the best one I think that's out there. And there are quite a few of them, especially if you start looking at the 0350. They've done like a dozen different variations on that one. This one I really like. It's a great knife, easy to carry. Yeah, they're a little more in demand right now because of the limited production, but I think even worth it. If you pay, $300 on the secondary market, I think you've got a knife that is appropriate for that price point. On the Wii, yeah, there's a little more going on here, guys. There's a little more interest that's generated. There's more detail. There's a slightly, and I mean just slightly, higher level of quality that is achieved. But it's nothing that impacts the use of the knife. It's just one of those things that a really detail-oriented person is going to appreciate. Now, when it comes to a recommendation, if someone came to me and said, hey, I want to spend $300 on a knife, what should I get? Probably I'm going to lean a little more toward the Wii because of that smaller size. It's going to be a little more doable for most people. And remember, we're only considering these two knives. And so, if someone says, yeah, I'm really deciding between these two, I've probably got to give a little more credit to the Wii 601. It's a really cool design. It's going to be a little more size appropriate for most people. Now, if someone says to me, I really like large knives, yeah, this is going to be, then for that person, that would tip the scales in the other direction. But for the average person, I think something a little bit smaller and where you're getting a little more for your money is probably going to be appreciated. Okay, so there you go. That's my overall take, my overall comparison between these two. Hope you enjoyed the video. I'd love to hear your comments down below, which one you appreciate and why. And as you compare these two feature to feature, what things stand out in your mind. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to hit that like and subscribe button, and we will talk to you soon.